gosh. That's wild. I have not stopped driving this thing since I picked it up. And I never thought that an electric car would be so fun to drive. I've driven a lot of electric cars and a lot of fast ones too. Even the sibling to this, the Kia EV6 GT. That's a lot of fun, but this thing is so different. This of course is the Hyundai IONIQ 5N, and it's the EV of the hour because everyone is talking about how good this is in a straight line and how fun it is to drive for being an EV. And I was a little bit skeptical. I was like sure, it will be a good fake, but surely it's not that convincing. And I tell you what, this is the best electric performance car you can buy for the money right now. So rumor has it that Kia dropped the specs for the EV6 GT and Hyundai was pissed because it was way early before the IONIQ 5N was going to come out, and they didn't want to bring out another high performance EV that was basically a clone of the Kia that had come out a few years before. So instead of rushing this car out to the market, they just sort of left it and they worked on it, and they were working on something that none of us could have expected. They weren't just focused on performance, but they were also focused on engagement. Now it's no secret that the success of the Hyundai N brand is all thanks to Albert Biermann, who used to be a BMW M executive. He led the M department for a little while and was responsible for a lot of cool cars. And now he works for Hyundai, and he was responsible for every single cool Hyundai you could think of. So everything from the first i30N, the i30N sedan, also known as the Elantra N, the i20N, and the Kona N. But this by far has to be their biggest challenge yet, because you have to make a fast electric car that's heavy and also makes no sound into something that's not just exhilarating to drive, but also engaging. So how do you do that? Well, you start by beefing up your power, because that's the first logical place you would start to make your EV more exciting. We don't have a front trunk space anymore, but normal Hyundai IONIQ 5s do. So instead we have this plastic cover that covers the front motor, and there's a rear motor. So this thing is all-wheel drive. This front motor makes 166 peak kilowatt power, and the rear one makes 282 kilowatts. And when you combine those two and you turn on N-Grin boost mode, you can get a maximum output of 478 kilowatts. And this thing makes a monstrous 770 newton meters of torque. And don't forget, in an electric car, all that torque is available from 0 RPM, so you have a bit of a tire slayer here. Now under here you also get adaptive dampers, because you have to make this thing handle well, so you can select a few different settings to reduce the stiffness or increase the stiffness of this car. And then you also have to increase your cooling, because there has to be better thermal management for your battery, especially if you're using it for track days or going to the drag strip, and also you have to increase your cooling for these higher output motors. So there's no more light bar that runs across the front here. Instead, this is now a passive grille, and you have more passive grills down here on the side in the form of passive aero, but then you have some active aero shutters up front, which basically control the airflow to the car. And these open and close depending on how much air the car needs. But of course you still retain these iconic pixel LED lights up front, but you now get a black badge up here which looks a bit more menacing. And of course you get a redesigned front bumper which just looks way cooler. Now after you upgrade your power and your suspension and your cooling, you have to upgrade your wheel and tire package. So these wheels are 21-inch wheels, and these are N specific wheels, so you can only get them on the IONIQ 5N, and they look fantastic. And these are wrapped in a Pirelli rubber. And this Pirelli tire is specifically made for the IONIQ 5N, because you can see on the side it says HN, which stands for Hyundai N Division. And also this is a specific electric car tire. So just like your other N cars, they also get Hyundai N specific Pirelli rubber. This also gets the same treatment, except it's for an electric car. And then in here you have these massive N brakes. So a cool fact about Hyundai's N Division is that they do all their brakes in-house, so they don't go to Brembo or a third-party supplier. So these are really tuned in and made for the IONIQ 5N. And what's great, in conjunction with the regen braking, you get great braking performance, because these brakes are 400 millimeters. These are huge, because you need this size brake to stop around 2.2 ton worth of EV. Now the good news is that an electric car platform already serves itself to be a really good performance car platform, because it has a very low center of gravity thanks to the majority of the weight being down here with the batteries. And this car was already a good looking car, but it's made to look even better thanks to an N body kit that you can see here with these side skirts and around the bumpers. But this also gets a wider track at the front and at the rear. So you get a wide body kit, which looks really quite cool. And as you can see right here, there's some passive aero that works along the side to help with air smoothing. So the air doesn't hit this big bump and then get all disturbed. Instead, it can flow through here and pass over those wheels. So it's cool to see that you have a bit more aero integrated integrated into the actual body of the car. So that wide body translates to the rear bumper here. We have some vents which look real, but as Matt from Carwell has taught me, I should always verify it with the leaf of truth. So I'm gonna go through here and poke. Yep, that's fake, that's fake, that's fake, and they become real in the lower half. So you have real vents here at the back, but they don't look like they're open because the top ones are fake. But you do have actual functional passive air, which helps with air smoothing and pulling that air out from the wheel well. You also have some reflectors that look like a race flag. You have this bumper extension here in the form of a rear diffuser, but in looking at this rear diffuser, it's not really too functional because it has a bit of a lip here. So it's just designed for more of a visual flair and probably helps with a tiny bit of air smoothing. And then some slight differences here at the back is that we have a camera here because this car is fitted with a camera rear vision mirror in case you don't want to use a regular mirror. And you've also got a rear wiper on this IONIQ 5N. And you also do have a little orange piece here just to let everyone know that you're driving around in an IONIQ 5N if they didn't spot this big N logo right there. The IONIQ 5 doesn't go without its creature comforts. You still get a power tailgate here at the back, and Hyundai wants you to think of this as an SUV. So it sort of is like a Tesla Model Y rival. It has plenty of boot space and a nice flat load floor, meaning it's very easy to put big items like this in the back. And underneath the boot floor, you're not getting a ton of space because of that larger battery and the fact this has an all-wheel drive system, but you are getting a charging cable here at the back, which other brands are going without, so it's nice to see that. And you also do get a cargo net, which is essential for any sort of luggage in the back because this is a flat load floor and things tend to fly around when you're driving on the very limit in the IONIQ 5N. And of course, there's no spare tire because there's no space for one, and so you get a tire mobility kit just in case you get it flat. But you are looking at the most practical Hyundai N car. So this Hyundai N car doesn't run on fuel, but its fuel is electricity. Now, it can take you as little as 17 minutes to charge from 10 to 80% from a fast charger. This can also accept a fast charge rate of up to 350 kilowatts, which is close to being the industry-leading figure for a vehicle's charge rate. That is awesome, and it's definitely something that sets the benchmark for other electric cars in 2024. There's also running an 800-volt battery architecture system, which means that it should be more efficient to charge and discharge, and that's a better battery system to have than a 400-volt battery architecture system. And according to evdatabase.org, the average real-world range of this car is around 390 kilometers, and that's pretty much on par with what I've been seeing with my car and its indicated range. You can get up to 500 kilometers apparently, according to EV database, when you're driving just in the city. But if you're doing a mix of city and highway driving and all that, you're going to see around, 400 kilometers of range would be sort of a real world target. And also this car does support vehicle to load. So if you have a vehicle to load adapter, you can plug this in and use the battery to charge items external to this car, which I think is still quite a brilliant thing that not all EVs do. Now in the back of the IONIQ 5N, it's pretty comfortable. It's just like every IONIQ 5. You can recline the seats just a little bit, you get a nice armrest in the middle, but we get some race-inspired elements back here like these end door sills, some actual checkered flag elements on the doors themselves, and some checkered flag prints here on the center console. You've also got two USB charging ports here at the back, but we don't get any rear heated seats, but we still get a little window blind if your passengers have to take a sleep here in the back. But we do get a more grippy material here in the middle of the seats, which means that if we go for a corner, your butt's not going to be sliding everywhere. But what I like is that you do have these cool N Performance bucket seats to look at, and they have an N logo on them to remind you that you are in an N Performance car. And you also have your own air vents here on the B pillar, which feels a bit more personable, and it's a lot better than having them down at your knees. But my common complaints back here is that the door bins are just too narrow and there's no center storage here, but you do have a vehicle to load plug here. So this is your AC adapter inside the car, so you can charge household plugs using this port here. So it's pretty cool. So if you want to take a laptop away, for example, you can get more power out of this socket. And if you want to get more boot space, you can slide the seat forwards and backwards as well. But unfortunately, there's not much feet room underneath these bucket seats, but I have plenty of knee room and decent amounts of headroom. Of course, lots of light from this big glass roof. Now the middle seat's okay because we have plenty of feet room because of a nice flat load floor, but it does feel like you're sitting on a bit of a hump. Now, these N Performance bucket seats are possibly the best part of this cabin. They are super comfortable. They've got a suede center so that you're going to be supported, but they also have great support around your sides and your legs. And additionally, this raised center console also allows you to brace your leg against it as well, because it has some padding here. So this really is designed for performance driving. And the car expects you're going to pull a lot of G's in this car. Now these seats are manually adjustable. They don't have any electronic adjustments, so you might be a bit annoyed by that for a car that costs over $100,000, but this is a more race orientated car. And we do have light up end logos in the seats, and we have blue stitching on them as well, so they look quite cool. We also have this blue piping running across the dashboard here, blue stitching up on the top of the dashboard, and we also get a glove box instead of a glove drawer, because on the other IONIQ 5s is a drawer, but here it is just a deep glove box, but it's still very practical. Now you get the same screen setup as you'd find in a normal IONIQ 5, except this has got a black border around it, and also there's some different software in here. But before I get into that, you also get a heads-up display, which is super advanced. It can show you a bunch of things and can even show you some really cool direction visuals for when you're using navigation, but it also shows you really cool performance visuals and gives you a rev gauge and also a sort of power and EV sort of gauge you get as well if you're not using the fake dual clutch transmission. That's right, this has a fake dual clutch transmission, and there's a bunch of other things in here that you can control in this car. So let's talk about those. So this center screen gets a software update, so we're running the latest Hyundai software, which looks fantastic. First of all, our EV menu. This is very detailed and very useful. We have a bunch of different stats about statistics and also our nearest charges as well, and also your battery status. But the most important thing here is the battery preconditioning. So you can go here and actually activate it and bring up the battery temperatures for a faster, more efficient charge. And you're also getting real-time usage information from things like your climate and seeing how much battery it's using. So right now on its lowest setting, the climate's still using 43% of this car's stationary power, which is pulling 0.24 kilowatts. But you also get basic information like phone, Apple CarPlay, which is now wireless, which is great, as well as wireless Android Auto. You have voice memos, you have connected services thanks to the Blue Link in this car, which allows you to control this car with your phone as well. So you can check things like the weather in here, and you have some basic settings, calendar, valet mode, and you also have vehicle diagnostics on board as well. But the most important thing is the N mode. So you can either click it on here on the screen, but I've done a quick setup here using this custom button, and we're straight into the N menu here. There is a lot to digest because you might not know what you're looking at, but let me show you what you've got. First of all, N torque distribution. Turn this on, and basically you can slide how much torque you want to go to the front or rear wheels. So you can basically have a front wheel drive car, a rear wheel drive car, or blend it up however you want, which is awesome. And then we have N pedal, which basically it's 3 levels of recuperation, which is selectable using the paddle shifters here. And when releasing the accelerator pedal, a series of rapid decelerations provides enhanced load transfer and tuck-in response. So basically, this thing will use the regen braking to put the load right up the front and get you to turn in quicker, which is really quite cool. Now there's some other things here, like we have the N launch control, and I love the fact you can choose what your road grip is, and it will adjust the traction control according to whatever road grip you give it, which is really quite cool. Then we have N E-shift. This simulates a dual clutch transmission like you'd find in a Hyundai N car, and you use these paddles here exactly how you would think you would use them. And you would use this in conjunction with the N Active Sound Plus. So here you can go through 3 different sounds. You've got ignition, which you can sort of hear in the background right now because I've got it all turned up to the highest setting, and you've also got 2 exterior speakers, one at the front, one at the back, and it gives the outside sound just a little bit of rumble and a little bit of sound. It's not too obnoxious and it's not that loud, so some people might not be able to hear it as easily. But you can go here and have Evolution, which is meant to be the sound of future N cars. You've got Supersonic, which is meant to sound like a supersonic jet or like a fighter jet. So let's have a listen to what these sound like. So I'm going to go into the N E-shift mode. So now, right now, we can actually rev our electric car. Take a listen. So this is meant to sound like a Hyundai N combustion motor. That's pretty cool. And then you've got Evolution, which is basically the sound of electric N cars. So this is what it sounds like. So a bit like a Formula E car. And then you have one that sounds like a fighter jet, which is insane. And the ignition one will give you pops and bangs. The Evolution one just sounds like a normal electric car, and which is a bit louder. But then you've got the Supersonic, which will actually make sounds that it makes it sound like you're breaking the sound barrier when you go to shift, and it's really loud. So they're very entertaining, but I'll turn them off for now. And then we have N road sense, which basically it will detect if there's a double bend coming up or any sort of sharp turns, and it will activate N mode automatically, which is kind of cool. So if you all of a sudden get the urge to go through a quick corner and you don't want to press these buttons, the car will automatically turn on N mode for you. Then we have battery preconditioning, and you have two modes, one for drag racing, one for track modes, and it will bring up the temperature of the battery, and it needs to be higher for a drag setting so you get the best performance and the best launch, but then it has to be a little bit cooler for track mode so it can sort of keep a regular temperature and give you sort of prolonged performance, which is really incredible, and that is awesome to have. And then we have N drift optimizer, which allows you to basically do drifts, which is awesome. So you can go to a real drive setting and get a more controlled drift setup, and it will use the traction control to make sure you're doing a nice drift without sort of spinning out, which is actually really easy to do in an electric car that doesn't have a actual weight balance setup. Instead of it's all quite a uniform weight at the bottom, it can easily spin out on itself. So it's nice to have a actual drift mode, just a bit like the Kia EV6 GT, but we have it here in the IONIQ 5N. And then we have N race, and we basically, what it says here is that when you activate this, you can use it for track driving. The motor and the battery are cooled to the maximum, and this may cause noises, vibration, and climate system performance degradation. Frequent use of N race may reduce battery durability. So you can use it for a sprint, so say if you're trying to set a lap time, or endurance. So if you're doing a track day, you can set up N race and basically tell the car, hey, we're doing a track day, be in your best performance and make sure everything is cooled and doesn't get overly hot, which is really quite cool. Additionally, we have a lap timer on board, and you can also check out your gauges here, and you can even test your acceleration too. And you can also select a bunch of tracks here in Australia, which is awesome. So if you're going to your local track, you can search up here on the N menu, and you can actually start tracking your lap using this menu here, which is awesome. And of course, you can go through here and activate your custom mode. So the things that are customizable here include the motor, so you can have it in Eco all the way up to Sport Plus. You've got steering, which is basically got 3 modes. You've got suspension, which has got 3 modes of adjustment. You've got an ELSD, so you can have it as responsive or unresponsive as you'd like. You've also got your ESC, which you can put it from all the way on to sport to off. Then you've got your heads-up display if you want it in sport with the big rev gauge and big and then you got your heads-up display, which you can basically make it look normal, or you can put it into a sport sort of setting, so it gives you all the vital information you need when you're going on a track day, for example. And of course, you've got your different modes of your sound generator, which is kind of cool here. So if you have your individual mode, you can flick that on and it will turn all the stuff on for you. And then here on this menu, you can see your lap timer and also see how much brake you're using and then how much accelerator you're using as well. Now the steering wheel is also very special because it's got a lot of buttons and it's very different from a normal Hyundai IONIQ 5 steering wheel. So we've got drive mode buttons, we have N boost here, so basically it's a silly name, but it's basically giving you overboost to give you max performance for around 10 seconds. And then you've also got these custom N buttons here, so if you want to jump into that dual clutch mode, for example, you can customize that here instead of having to jump through the menu, which is kind of annoying. And then you've also got one here which I use just to jump straight into N mode, and also your individual mode. And of course you have your paddle shifters here, which you use for regen or changing your gears, and you have lots of physical buttons and it feels really nice in the hand. You've also got a sort of really interesting screen here because you can get this nice big center rev gauge, which is quite cool, and the actual red line depends on which mode you're in, but when you're out of that you can get a more normal looking gauge cluster, which is quite nice. And also if you go into Eco and Normal and Sport, you'll get different degrees of the sound generator, so you can still get a bit of sound in normal, but if you want all that off and you want to conserve the most amount of battery, you can jump into Eco and it drives a lot like a regular electric car. But let me explain why this is the best electric car to drive. So first of all, we have to test launch control, of course, because this car has it. You can select what road grip you have. We're on medium, so foot on the brake, foot on the gas, and you get the fake exhaust sound. It's visceral. This thing is awesome. Now, what I noticed during my time with this car is that it's actually not crazy power. Look, it's a really quick car. 0 to 100 in 3.4 seconds is an insane time for any car. And Jason Kamita over in the US with Haggerty tested this thing in a drag race with a bunch of other SUVs that cost nearly 3 times or 4 times as much as this, and it outdrags all of them. You can go into this dual clutch mode, which I pre-programmed here, and you will have a slower 0 to 100 time, but you'll have far more fun driving this thing. So this is the magic part of it. You can drive this as a fast EV, sure, that's fine. And look, it's the best handling EV even without any of these little tricks that it has. It's really responsive on the road. It's got a nice wide wheelbase. It just feels super flat and secure on the road, and that extra, like, actual body width of the car, thanks to the actual track width increasing, just feels far more responsive. Now, I have a boost mode here. I've activated it, and oh my gosh. That's wild. So it is just one of those EVs that is so exhilarating to drive. Going through some back roads here, it is so fun. I'm having a lot of fun driving this thing. The responsiveness to the wheel is great too. And you can dial it all back. That's the best part. If you don't want to drive it like this all the time, you don't have to. And you don't have a loud exhaust in the background all the time. I just have it on for this sake. But this dual clutch transmission simulation is the most compelling thing about this car. So if I pull down a couple of gears, the car will automatically engine brake, and if you have the ignition sound on, which I have, it will make some fake burbles and pops at the back. And we're getting close to red line here. Mechanical sympathy would say change. I'm pinned on the red line right now, and the car is jumping, being like, come on, let's change gear, go to change gear. Oh my God. This is mental, and that engagement is so real. You're getting torque dips in between each of your shifts, and if I go right up into a 5th gear, 6th gear set, I'm in 8th gear right now, let's plant it, I'm not going anywhere, and you can hear the engine dragging too. This is awesome. The sound complements what these fake revs are doing. This isn't necessary, but this is all in the name of engagement. And these brakes are fantastic. You can easily pull the right paddle here to let the car shift for itself, or you can just simply jump out of that mode. And if you go to brake, these 400mm discs are massive, and they just do a great job of gripping you up. And oh my gosh, the responsiveness of this thing is just incredible, but you're also getting a nice amount of feedback, which makes all the difference here. Now, what are some of the downsides of this car? Well, the range isn't that great. It's only got around 390 kilometers of real world range, and right now with 50% left, I have 173 kilometers indicated range, which isn't fantastic. But if I jump it right into eco mode, I can get close to 191 kilometers of estimated range. So, but my driving experience is just numb. This is really the worst when you're driving in eco mode and you want to drive this car fast. But you do have normal and sport available as well, and also an individual mode. Now, unfortunately, all the other modes do require a track to make the most of them. So if you guys want a track day video and see what this thing can do on a track, let me know in the comments. But otherwise, I'm using this more as a back road burner. And this is something that EVs aren't really exciting for, because they're big, they're heavy, but if you have this thing in N mode, oh my gosh, the front gets really light as you send power to the rear, which is fantastic. And if you do use that torque slider, you can get some nice power oversteer on this thing as well. Or if you want front wheel drive grip, you can throw all the torque to the front motor and the front wheels. And it's just so incredible to me. And this level of customization, it might be foreign to some people and they might not like it. And if you're one of those people, then sure, this probably isn't the car for you. But for someone like me, who loves just dialing in my driving experience, and I'm not too picky about what sort of powertrain my car has, as long as it drives really well, this is an awesome vehicle, regardless if you like electric cars or not. Oh my gosh. And because you're getting that audible feedback, you sort of get a sense of how fast you're going too, which is a big problem in electric cars that can go really fast, because you don't really have an audible sense of how fast you're really going. So you could be going a little bit faster than you might estimate, and it really stuffs up your cornering. So having this audible feedback, as ridiculous as it may sound, but it actually makes a huge difference with being able to judge your speed while driving. And it's honestly made my week so much better driving this thing. It's so fun to use, and it really does feel like a proper end product. It's insane how, like, you might think, how can a company that makes light hot hatches make a heavy EV feel good to drive? And there's a lot of wizardry here, is what it feels like. It feels like there's a lot of engineering that's going into this car beyond what I would even expect. There's bits and pieces to the code here, for example, that allow this dual clutch transmission to behave like a real dual clutch transmission. They didn't stop short like Fiat did with the electric R-Bath. The electric R-Bath sounds like it's got a CVT transmission on it because it doesn't shift gears. It only just brings up the revs, a bit like what we're hearing now. But being able to sort of modulate your revs here is one of the best things I've ever experienced, especially in a world that is going electric. what? If you're depressed about a world going electric, you need to drive one of these because there is hope. That's it, I'm jumping on the bandwagon. Why do I love this so much and why is it my top recommendation when it comes to buying a performance electric car? Well, it all comes down to engagement. This thing does engagement like no other electric car can. And that's the thing that everyone's been missing out on. And to be honest, it's the first electric car that's convinced me that if the last barrel of oil was produced tomorrow, I wouldn't be so upset if I had to live with this for the rest of my life. Now in second place, I would put the Ford Mustang Mach-E GT out of the fast performance electric cars I've driven. That's a brilliant handling and very fast and very engaging EV to drive, but it is missing out on the engagement that this car provides, which is pretty much 5 times the amount of engagement you'll get out of any other electric car. And it really comes down to the fact that this has audible feedback and also physical feedback in the form of a fake exhaust sound and also a fake dual clutch transmission. Those two simple things make a world of a difference. And also being able to customize your drive experience to the point where you can make this thing pretty much rear-wheel drive or front-wheel drive is also a huge step up compared to everyone else.